No cabin for freeloaders? My brother sneered, tossing my ticket overboard. 10 minutes later, the captain radioed, "Madam Owner Rep, your suite is ready. Tell me your location in chat and smash like if karma stories fuel your day." No cabin for freeloaders. My brother Lance sneered, snatching the boarding pass out of my hand and flinging it over the railing. The laminated card fluttered once, caught a gust rolling off the Hudson, and disappeared beneath the pier. Laughter erupted behind him. Cousins, in-laws, an aunt who still called me kiddo, even though I was 33. They'd gathered for the Mitchell family reunion cruise, a floating celebration of bloodline and bragging rights, and apparently, I was tonight's punchline. 10 minutes later, exactly 10 minutes, the ship-wide intercom crackled to life, and the captain's baritone rolled across the deck. "Madam Owner Representative, your panoramic suite is prepared. Please proceed to the bridge foyer." Lance's grin collapsed so fast it looked painful. My mother's wineglass paused mid-sip. Dad's eyebrows shot up like busted window shades. Nobody moved, nobody breathed, and that was the opening scene. Before I explain how a freeloader wound up holding authority over a $500 million vessel, drop where you're watching from in the comments and smash that like button if karma stories fuel your day. I grew up in a neighborhood where summer smelled like asphalt and chlorine, and every driveway held an SUV plastered with decals announcing "Honor Roll Kid lives here." My family loved those decals. They bought them by the dozen for my older siblings. Lance, varsity letters, Ivy League admit, eventual MBA. Natalie, cello prodigy, Fulbright scholar, Wall Street analyst. Then there was me, Sloan, the quiet one who sketched ship silhouettes on notebook margins, built Lego harbors instead of dollhouses, and memorized cruise ship tonnages the way other kids memorized batting averages. My parents humored the phase until I asked for a trip to the port of Miami for my 12th birthday. Dad counteroffered tickets to Disney and called it a compromise. Grades? Solid but never headline material. Extracurriculars? Robotics club, part-time lifeguard, a weekend job in the marina bait shop once I turned 16. Lance said it smelled like dead squid. Mom said college admissions officers wouldn't understand. What they really meant was the marina didn't photograph well for Christmas cards. Meanwhile, every dinner conversation was a performance review. Whose internship scored a housing stipend, whose frat mixer included the governor's son, whose LSAT practice scores predicted greatness. I played along, nodding, clapping, tucking away each slight like a sailor stowing ballast. College was a modest state university with an unglamorous major: maritime logistics. Nobody at Thanksgiving could pronounce it, so they ignored it. That freed me to disappear into internships that paid in experience and midnight coffee, port scheduling software in Savannah, procurement spreadsheets for a ferry operator on Puget Sound. My resume looked like leftovers to outsiders, but to me, it was a map. Every line item another knot toward a destination nobody else could see. The crash came senior year when Dad's financial planning practice imploded after a partner's scandal. Suddenly, tuition checks bounced. I juggled 3 part-time jobs, maxed out federal aid, and sold my ancient Honda for scrap value. I graduated owing $50,000 and owing nobody excuses. I also picked up a cheap habit, reading SEC filings instead of romance novels. That's how I found Blue Wave Cruise Holdings, small, underleveraged, quietly profitable, ignored by Wall Street because it operated niche expedition vessels instead of Vegas-style floating cities. Its ticker fluttered under $5. I scraped together $2,000, the entire contents of a rainy day fund, and bought shares. 6 months later, a Norwegian conglomerate announced an ecotourism joint venture with Blue Wave. The stock tripled overnight, and I didn't sell a single share. I read every press release, tuned into every earnings call, and started emailing thoughtful questions to their investor relations inbox until the CFO invited me to coffee at a conference in Fort Lauderdale. "You frame risk like someone who's lived it," she said. 2 lattes later, she'd penciled my name for an entry-level analyst role on the strategy team. My salary barely paid Brooklyn rent, but I took it. Knowledge was compounding interest. Over 4 years, I mapped fuel hedging schemes, optimized route algorithms, and traveled caboose class on repositioning voyages to interview deckhands about supply waste. My reports saved Blue Wave $17 million and shaved 2.3% off their carbon output. The board promoted me to Director of Strategic Initiatives at 28. I used the raise not to upgrade apartments, but to exercise stock options. By 30, I quietly owned 3.2% of the company, enough to earn an invitation to shareholder luncheons, but still small enough to stay invisible to my family, who assumed I was assistant to some cruise guy. The reunion cruise invitation arrived on ivory cardstock last winter. Family only, it proclaimed in cursive worthy of a royal decree. 10-day North Atlantic loop on the brand-new Aurora Rhapsody. Capacity 4,000 guests. Godmothered by a pop star, touted as the future of sustainable cruising. I stared at the renderings. Sleek hull, wind assist sails, the Blue Wave insignia I'd helped modernize on its funnel. Lance's name sat above the RSVP line in bold, so did Natalie's. Mine appeared below in faint type, almost an afterthought. I booked a panoramic suite under my corporate travel allowance, uploaded the trip to Concur, and kept my mouth shut. I didn't need to flaunt anything. I just wanted a week at sea, the smell of brine, the rhythmic hum of engines, to remind myself why I'd chosen this path. The family politics I could endure like mild seasickness, or so I thought. When embarkation day arrived, the pier buzzed with drones filming champagne christenings and influencers chasing perfect lighting. The Mitchell clan showed up in matching polo shirts embroidered with the family crest. Seriously, stacking Rimowa luggage like gilded cargo. I wore a navy linen jumpsuit and carried a single carry-on. That's all you need when you're comfortable in your own wake. Or again, so I thought. Because 5 steps from the gangway, Lance intercepted me with a grin sharp enough to slice anchor rope. "Change of plans, Sloaney," he said, brandishing a clipboard. "Mom and Dad decided cabins should go to people pulling their weight. Yours has been reassigned to Aunt Ruth's Pilates instructor." He held up my pass just long enough for me to read Suite 1402 before flicking it, frisbee style, over the rail. My parents stood a few yards away, pretending fascination with a souvenir kiosk. Natalie winced, but didn't intervene. For a heartbeat, I considered telling them the truth. That the Aurora Rhapsody sailed under an ownership consortium in which I held the 3rd largest stake, that my board badge would open every door on this ship. Instead, I inhaled salt air, offered Lance the kindest smile I could muster, and said, "Enjoy your cruise." Then I turned, walked to the guest services podium, flashed my Blue Wave credential, and asked the purser to buzz the bridge. 10 minutes later, the captain's announcement echoed across the decks, and every Mitchell head swiveled toward me. This time, I didn't smile. I simply picked up my carry-on and headed for the executive elevator, letting the silence fill with their disbelief. The elevator doors closed on the stupefied faces of my family, and for the first time all morning, I exhaled fully. Stainless steel walls reflected a woman even I barely recognized. Composed, precise, eyes bright with the kind of confidence that comes from years of muted victories. A soft chime heralded Deck 15, Private Bridge Foyer. The moment the doors parted, First Officer De Luca extended his hand. "Ms. Mitchell, welcome aboard. The captain's expecting you." He pronounced my surname the Italian way. Michel, as if introducing nobility. Captain Søren Leifson awaited me outside the bridge, uniform crisp, posture perfect. We'd met twice before at fleet strategy summits, and he'd once emailed to thank me for a routing algorithm that cut Aurora-class fuel burn by 4%. "Honored to host you," he said now. "Your suite is pre-stocked with the reports you requested." Straight to business. Another reason I loved ship people. I spent the next hour touring command centers the public never sees. Water treatment arrays gleaming like sci-fi lungs. composting digesters that turned buffet scraps into garden soil, an engine room quieter than a library thanks to hybrid turbines. Every new corridor sloughed off another layer of childhood inadequacy. I'd helped design these systems. I deserved to walk these decks. Yet part of me still felt like the kid whose marina job smelled like squid. At 1400, the captain hosted a small reception in the owner's salon. Just department heads and me. No PR photos, per my standing request. I signed off on experimental wind-assisted routing for the transatlantic leg, joked with the hotel director about midnight pizza logistics, and still managed to read the SMS barrage lighting up my phone. Lance, where are you? Mom. This isn't funny, Sloaney. Call me. Dad, predictably, went silent. He saved confrontation for face-to-face superiority. By sail away, the ship's horn belted its deep note farewell. Crowds lined railings, and the Manhattan skyline slid astern like a cardboard set. I stood on my panoramic balcony, 50 feet above the private terrace Lance had thought was his, and watched tugboats pirouette in our wake. Sunset painted the water copper. Somewhere 2 decks below, my family scrambled for explanations. I almost felt sorry for them. Then I remembered my ticket sinking into river sludge and let the sympathy drift away like foam. Flashback to context they'd never bothered to learn. The months after Dad's firm collapsed, I'd eaten canned beans 5 nights a week. While Lance shopped custom suits on his management trainee stipend, I wrote white papers on ballast water sterilization and freelanced GA drawings for ferry operators. In 3 years, my net worth went from negative $50,000 to positive 6 figures. But those figures hid inside index funds and personal LLCs because I'd learned early. Visible wealth invites judgment, and hidden wealth grants freedom. By the time Blue Wave filed for an IPO, I was the quiet shareholder nobody noticed, until they needed vision beyond spreadsheets. Then I was suddenly indispensable. Yet back home, the only question my parents asked was whether I'd met anyone steady. They sent me articles titled, "How Women Can Still Have It All." Natalie forwarded job postings at her bank. Lance bragged about his nameplate office. I nodded, smiled, drank my seltzer. My therapist called it strategic invisibility. I called it weathering. Now, aboard the Rhapsody, invisibility cracked open like sunrise. At 1900 hours, the captain hosted the VIP welcome dinner in the Aurora Grill. My invitation allowed a +3. I selected the chief sustainability officer, the hotel director, and the staff chief engineer. A nod to people who keep ships alive. The maitre d' escorted me past velvet ropes just as my family arrived through the main entrance. I felt their eyes track me across the marble floor to a roped-off mezzanine overlooking the Atlantic. Mom's face blended pride, confusion, and a dash of fear, like a tourist realizing the little statue she bought is actually a relic. Lance's jaw worked soundlessly. Dad attempted a nod that landed closer to a tick. Natalie offered a hesitant wave. Years on Wall Street had taught her when markets shifted. I returned a polite smile and disappeared behind the mezzanine curtain. Stage directions. Curtain rises on a new power dynamic. Audience still reading the playbill. Dinner glittered. Line caught sea bass. Hydroponic greens. Zero-waste citrus foam. Conversation sparkled even more. The hotel director revealed occupancy forecasts. The engineer praised the hybrid propulsion upgrade. The sustainability officer proposed a scholarship fund for maritime engineering majors from underserved ports. I pledged seed money on the spot. That's the joy of having means. Decisions turn into actions fast. At 2200 hours, I excused myself. Time to face the family. I descended the spiral staircase to Deck 7's champagne bar, where Mitchell's had occupied a leather banquette like displaced royalty. Mom spotted me first. "Sweetheart, there you are." She started to stand, then hesitated, as if unsure whether hugging was still protocol. I helped her decide with a brief embrace. The others followed suit. Stiff handshakes, awkward cheek taps. Dad cleared his throat. "We'd like a word. Private." I guided them to a quieter alcove. Lance launched in. "What the hell, Sloan? You vanish, then the captain pages you like you own the place." I sipped sparkling water. "I co-own it, indirectly, through Blue Wave stock and a seat on the strategic committee." Mom's eyes flicked between us. "Why didn't you tell us?" Classic question from people who'd never asked. "Because every time I tried explaining maritime logistics, you changed the subject to bar exam prep," I answered softly. "I figured silence was simpler." Dad bristled. "You're indicting us for supporting your siblings? They chose respectable paths." I met his gaze. Respectability is perspective. The systems I helped design cut carbon emissions and saved lives by reducing sewage discharge. Sounds respectable to me. The retort landed like a swell against a seawall, force absorbed but not unnoticed. Lance attempted levity. Okay, you're some secret shipping tycoon. Cool flex. But Mom and Dad didn't cancel your cabin. I did. Figured you'd bail anyway and we'd upgrade Ruth." He shrugged, expecting a blow-up. Instead, I nodded. "Thank you." He blinked. "For what?" "For clarifying the hierarchy you believe in. It made the captain's announcement more poetic." Natalie snorted. First genuine laugh I'd heard from her in years. Mom tried diplomacy. "Can we join you for breakfast tomorrow? Catch up properly?" I agreed on one condition. They'd take a behind-the-scenes environmental tour with me first. Dad hesitated until Natalie elbowed him. Deal struck. We parted with tentative warmth, a ceasefire charted on unfamiliar waters. Back in my suite, ocean swished against hull plates like applause. I opened my laptop, drafted notes for tomorrow's board call, and thought about how tides turn silently until shorelines notice. Some victories shout, others simply rise. Mine was the latter, and it felt exactly right. Dawn snapped through my suite's glass wall. Silver water, apricot sky, contrails etching the upper air. I traded the linen jumpsuit for company polos no passenger would ever see and met my parents outside the service elevator at 7:30 sharp. Dad looked skeptical of anything happening below deck. Mom clutched a silk scarf like a talisman against machinery. Natalie, to her credit, appeared curious, a tablet in hand. First stop, the waste heat recovery gallery, a corridor of pipes breathing out warm air that's rerouted to heat passenger showers. The staff chief engineer explained the loop. I added that the retrofit had paid for itself in 14 months. Data I'd modeled. Dad murmured impressive, as though the word were foreign on his tongue. Next, the digesters. Microbes churning yesterday's buffet into sterile mulch that fertilizes port gardens in Reykjavik and Cork. Mom pinched her nose, but listened when the environmental officer cited a 92% reduction in landfill waste. Eventually she asked, "Sloan, did you design this?" I corrected gently. "A team did. I just secured the grant and modeled the ROI." The correction hung in the air like a new constellation. They realized I spoke fluent systems, not hobbies. Up one deck, the propulsion monitoring room glowed cobalt. Angular graphs danced across 15 monitors. Natalie's banker brain lit up at the efficiency metrics. 7 megawatt savings per crossing? She whispered. I handed her a laminated card, my route optimization algorithm, my signature in the corner. "Your algorithm's worth more than my bonus pool," she muttered, half proud, half jealous. The tour ended on the forward observation platform where turbines murmured beneath teak decking. Lance arrived late. Sunglasses, hangover, no apology. He flashed a grin at the officer. "Any chance of bumping into the owner's dinner tonight?" The officer glanced at me, then back to Lance. "Invitations are Ms. Mitchell's prerogative." The grin curdled. One ripple can rewrite a tide. Over breakfast in the crew mess, my choice, we ate shakshuka, whipped up by a Filipino cook nicknamed Atlas. Mom tried her first instant coffee from a stainless urn. Dad balanced on a bolted-down stool. I told stories of 3-meter swells in the Drake Passage, of crew who wired money home to build houses floodwaters couldn't reach. As we left, Mom touched my sleeve. I always thought cruising was champagne and ballrooms. I never saw this. Behind her, Dad simply said, "Thank you for showing us." The ship steamed northeast through a corridor of mist. Passengers queued for trivia while I tackled email. Blue Wave Legal drafted press notes for our upcoming ESG bond. The scholarship fund paperwork needed signatures, and a junior analyst sought guidance on bunker fuel forward curves. I answered everything before noon. Quiet competence, the currency of my life. At 1400 hours, Natalie knocked on my suite door. She'd spent the morning running discounted cash flow on the scholarship program and had questions only a Wall Street mind would devise. We ended up sketching a perpetuity model on the panoramic window with dry erase markers while white-capped waves scrolled behind the glass. I'd forgotten finance could feel like building, not just extracting, she said. I offered her a seat on the program's advisory board. Her eyes misted, a soft tide on granite. Meanwhile, Lance texted, "Meet on pool deck bar number 3 at 1600. I found him nursing a craft IPA, sunglasses now a shield." "Look," he began, "I messed up. But we could package your ESG projects into a SPAC, raise quick capital, exit big. I know, guys." Old habits die lumbering deaths. I let him talk 5 minutes, then asked a single question. Would this venture reduce emissions or just inflate multiples? He faltered. I told him to draft a proposal that met the UN's decarbonization targets first, then maybe we'd revisit. He stared, half offended, half awed. Respect can dawn slower than sunrise? That night, the captain's gala sparkled. I wore a simple black jumpsuit, no diamonds, just a lapel pin shaped like a propeller. The same propeller I'd sketched as a kid. The maitre d' escorted my family to my table this time, not vice versa. Dad toasted New Horizons. Mom surprised me by thanking the engine crew in her speech. Lance listened, silent, contemplative. Natalie clinked her glass against mine with a conspiratorial grin. To compound interest, in capital, and in relationships. At 2300 hours, the bridge reported barometric pressure dropping faster than forecast. North Atlantic weather loves drama. Captain Lifeson rerouted 10 nautical miles south, but the storm advanced like a closing hand. Passengers slept. Bridge teams plotted. I went to bed counting isobars. 2:17. Alarm vibration, not sirens, just the discreet buzz of a senior staff page. Mitchell to bridge. I zipped a sweater over pajamas and jogged barefoot through hushed corridors. On the radar, a rogue low-pressure cell spun scarlet bands, wind gusts hitting 70 knots. One stabilizer fin refused to extend. Starboard azimuth pod ran hotter than comfort levels. Engineer Velasquez recommended throttling back. Hotel predicted seasick carnage if we didn't outrun the worst. Captain glanced at me. Fuel to distance matrix. Sloan, your call. The irony. Years of invisibility, now a bridge crew seeking my go-no-go. I eyeballed wave vectors, cross-referenced the pod's redundancy, then suggested a 12-degree course alteration, shaving 46 minutes off exposure and reducing pitch by nearly a degree, enough to keep soup in bowls. The captain nodded. Execute. We punched through walls of spray. I felt the hull vibrate like a bass drum, but she held. By 5 a.m., seas lay down obediently. First pastel bands of dawn spilling across calm. Casualties, minor bruises, 1 shattered martini set, 0 structural damage. At breakfast, the captain announced we'd skirted a rogue gale thanks to the elegant math of Director Mitchell. Applause rippled through the restaurant like bullwake against shore. My parents sat 2 tables away. Dad's face looked oddly young, relieved, maybe proud. Lance stared as if recalculating every childhood assumption. Natalie typed fiercely, probably updating a spreadsheet of sister alpha coefficients. Late morning, I visited the infirmary where an elderly passenger, Mrs. Gutierrez, clutched an ice pack. "Rough night," she laughed. We chatted. She mentioned a grandson studying marine engineering. I wrote a scholarship contact on her discharge form. Little hinges swing heavy doors. 5 days later, the Aurora Rhapsody glided into Dublin under clear skies. Emerald hills, gulls, a piper on the quay playing us home. Disembarkation buzzed with normal farewells, selfies, tip envelopes, reluctant hugs. My family lingered near the gangway. Dad spoke first. "Your mother and I read your white paper on closed-loop desalination. We had no idea this level of detail went into cruise operations." His voice cracked. "We're proud, Sloan. Not proud because of numbers or titles. Proud that you built something meaningful." Mom added, "I bought noise-canceling boots for the engine room tour I'm scheduling back home. Figured I should start learning instead of assuming." Lance stepped forward, hands jammed in pockets. "About that SPAC, I'm tearing it up. I'm enrolling in a marine sustainability certificate instead. Maybe usefulness trumps optics." He half smiled. "Sibs packed?" He offered a fist bump. I tapped it. Natalie hugged me outright and whispered, "Advisory board meeting next month. Bring window markers." We parted on the pier, still imperfect humans, but charting new coordinates. They rolled Remoas toward taxis. I shouldered a backpack and headed for a meeting with Dublin Port Authority about shore power subsidies. The gulls cried overhead, ambition with wings. That evening, in a quiet hotel room overlooking the Liffey, I opened my journal. Success isn't about proving naysayers wrong. It's about proving your vision right, quietly, persistently, until even the waves recognize your name. I closed the book, opened my phone, and hit record for the outro you're hearing now. Have you ever been tossed aside, only to steer the whole ship? Share your story below. I read every comment. If this voyage inspired you, smash the like button and subscribe. Next episode, we're diving into how I turned $2,000 of student loan leftovers into board-level equity, because invisible leverage is the best leverage. Until then, keep your keel even and your vision steady. Quiet seas don't build skilled captains.